The people of BookTok can have some strong opinions. One series in particular that I've seen for years and just haven't read yet is the Magnolia Parks series. People either love it or they hate it. And for that reason, I decided to pick up copies for myself and I'm going to read them for the very first time, pretty much going in blind. I don't really know much about what the series is about and let you know if I think they are worth the hype or not. I've completed the entire series and overall what I think is I unfortunately didn't have a ton of time to read today because I was doing a lot of work. I did, however, get to page 34, chapter 4, and wanted to give my initial thoughts. She's a beautiful, affluent, self-involved, and mildly neurotic London socialite. He is Britain's most photographed bad boy who broke her heart. Magnolia Parks and BJ Ballantyne are meant to be, and everyone knows it. She dates other people to keep him at bay. He sleeps with other girls to get back at her for it. But at the end of their very sad endeavor to get over one another, it's still each other they crawl back to. Only now their dysfunction is catching up with them, pulling at their seams and fraying the world they've built. A world where neither has let the other go completely. As the cracks start to show and secrets begin to surface, Magnolia and BJ are finally forced to face the formidable question they've been avoiding all their lives. How many loves do you really get in a lifetime? I personally love books about celebrities, love a good messy relationship because in this type of book, they feel real. You know, I don't necessarily crave a perfect rom-com all the time. This book seems a lot more up my alley than some other rom-coms. Not that this is a rom-com. I don't even know what genre you'd put this in because I've never read anything exactly like this, but what sent me over the edge of years of wrestling, do I read this, do I not read this, because of mixed reviews of people either loving it or hating it. I recently read The Favorites, one of my 5-star reads of this year so far, and I saw someone compare The Favorites to feeling like the Magnolia Parks series. Once I heard that those two books be compared, I was like, okay, I want to dive into the series. I feel like I've read quite a bit to get a good first impression of what Magnolia and BJ are like, what their friends are like, what their world is like. Magnolia is a socialite. She comes from a very wealthy family, from famous parents who were never really present in her life, is a model. They're friends with this whole rich posse. It takes place in London. You can just tell that they're obsessed with each other and it's going to be very toxic. They keep referencing something that BJ did to Magnolia 2.5-ish years ago. We haven't found out what it is yet, and I'm hoping we don't go too far into the book until we figure that out, because that's gonna drive me crazy in a bad way if I'm like, okay, what is this thing that we keep referencing that we're not actually going to bring up? And I know, like, that's the intrigue the author is trying to build there. I love reading, like, the tabloids, and I've flipped through quickly and I see text messages. It's interesting because I can't ever imagine living a life like this, and maybe that's why I enjoy reading about it so much. For example, she has him over and they're just having sleepovers every night when she has a boyfriend. So weird. I can't imagine that. I want to understand them more because even BJ has tattoos of her everywhere. Just subtle inside jokes, nods. You've literally been this obsessed with each other since you were little. You can't let each other go, and this is either going to end very badly or they're going to sort out their differences and it's gonna be a soulmate type situation after everything they've been through. Regardless, they're very young to be in the spotlight and to have grown up in the spotlight, and I'm sure that has affected them a lot, especially with Magnolia's parents not being present for any of it and her basically being raised by a nanny because her parents chose famous people and work over her and her sister. We've gotten a lot of characters introduced to us already and I'm having a hard time keeping them apart, so I'm hoping we're gonna be introduced to them again so I can learn more about the dynamics there. I have no idea what direction this is going to go because I know next to nothing about this series. I've made some damage today, and again, it's been another busy day, but I was trying to read as much as I could, and honestly, a good sign is that I woke up this morning and wanted to pick it up. I'm starting to get more invested in the story now. I'm on page 128, chapter 18. The chapters are pretty much flip-flopping between Magnolia and BJ's point of view. Soon after my last update, we found out why they broke up. Let me just say, BJ is a tool. Magnolia has her own problems, and she reacts a lot of times sometimes in the crazy way she does, I can tell because she's hurt and insecure and cannot get over BJ, but in the same vein, BJ can't get over Magnolia, and he does all these terrible things to get back at her, make her jealous, and actually Magnolia's sister brought up a really good point and clocked that man. Basically saying, like, all the things you do with other girls to hurt her, and not only just doing them, you decide to tell her about it, because when you do, it makes her sad, and her being sad about that validates your feelings for her. She still cares. She wouldn't be sad otherwise. She's sad that I'm sleeping with other people. It must be because she still has feelings for me. You do it to feel close to her. When I read that, I was like, okay, that is actually exactly what my thought process is. I know we all cope with things differently, but there is going to have to be quite a lot of character development for me to, one, like BJ, and also be down for the idea of them getting back together, because at this point, I wish they would just cut each other off, move on, but that's not how this story is going to work. It's supposed to be messy. If you've ever been in a situationship before and you read this, the mind games of, does he like me? Does he not like me? His words are not matching up with his actions. I'm seeing that a lot, and I'm hurting for Magnolia because of that. Should she make some different decisions? Probably. All I'm seeing is just a young girl who BJ is her first and only love. She doesn't know how to move on from him. BJ is just throwing it around in her face and playing all these mind games with her. There are sentences and paragraphs where I feel she encompasses the feelings of the characters really well. I'm liking how she's woven in flashbacks. I like the narration style. I don't read books with this type of narration style often, if I even have. It's like if Magnolia and BJ are talking directly to the reader. They'll be like, oh yeah, this person, of course you know who they are, they're blah 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 blah, as if you are actually living in this world. I noted a few pages that I wanted to read some passages from because they give you a good vibe of what's actually happening. This is Magnolia talking about BJ. He's a time bomb for me. Do you see now? He'll hurt me. He'll always hurt me. I'll never be safe with him, even if I'm always safe next to him. So it doesn't matter if I love him, which I don't. But if I did, it doesn't matter even now, because loving him is the same thing as tossing the keys to my heart to a valet without a driver's license. He'll drive me off a cliff. That summarizes what their relationship is. I'm thinking of when you like the idea of someone more than who they actually are when I'm reading this, and this is with Magnolia talking about what BJ did to her. My devastation over what had happened and what he did was eclipsed by how much I missed him and wanted to be around him, because he's the kind of person you want to be around at all costs, and believe me, it was at all costs. I learned to look him in the eye again. I learned not to cry every time I left him again. I learned how to breathe through him flirting with other people. I realized we could still talk to each other without using words, and somehow in the bloodshed of it all, I found my friend. It's because I'm weak, I think. It was easier to be his friend than not to be. Too much of my life, maybe even too much of who I am entirely, can be traced back to him or us. Everything wonderful, everything magical, everything painful, everything beautiful and spectacular and wretched and defining that has happened to me happened with him, and I hate him for that. Also, we're getting introduced to Daisy Haites, which is the title of book number 2. Am I infuriated with these characters? Yes, but at the same time, I am living for the juicy drama that is happening. I think it takes a very specific type of book taste to enjoy this. I understand why people wouldn't enjoy this book. It's feeling like a super juicy gossip session about celebrities that you get to peek the curtain and look into their lives and see like a really toxic, real, dysfunctional relationship, or situationship is probably a better word to describe that. The angst in this book is insane. I think people misinterpret this to be a romance, myself included. I mean, I kind of knew that it wasn't, and I don't think the US covers do them justice for what they actually are. I like the UK covers so much better. I wish that I could switch to them. Anyways, the angst, like I was saying, is insane. I love a mixed media book. I love seeing text messages, news articles, emails, letters, all of it. We only get some text messages here and there. My only major critique right now is that I wish we would get more mixed media in it. I wish we could see the news articles that they're referencing instead of just hearing about the headlines. I want to be able to sit down and read what the tabloids have said about these people. I also think that this is a lot more than just a romance. It's a commentary on people as out of touch as people like Magnolia, BJ, their families, their friends, with how rich they are. You can just hear Magnolia's entitlement drip off the page when she's talking about everyone's outfits. She's always describing what people are wearing, what she's wearing, and she has to list out the full name of it and what designer it came from. I think that's really interesting choice because it shows you a lot about what Magnolia is like. Another thing that I'm picking up on, people say that these characters are super unlikable. I agree, but coming from reading the favorites, and I'm going to mention the favorites a lot because that's what made me read this, and honestly, I would agree that the favorites is reminding me of this book with the romance aspect of it. Obviously, there are different settings, but the thing about the favorites and Magnolia Parks is they're not really supposed to be likable or unlikable. They're just human characters. There are times where you're rooting for them. There are times where you are smacking your head saying, what are you doing right now? And I think it's supposed to be like this because it feels like a messy, real relationship of them wanting to get back together and not knowing if things can be different than what their relationship was in the past, seeing if they can get over the things that they've done to each other. I'm almost to the halfway point. We're going to our cabin this weekend, so I'm going to have a few days of reading. I'm really excited. This is not going to take me long to finish because I've flown through it in probably 3 sittings so far. It's not just solely about Magnolia and BJ. We're having the friend dynamics, the family dynamics, everything so messy. Things are happening left and right that I'm not sure how she's going to be able to handle them in a healthy way. And let's just say that she doesn't necessarily tend to do that. And I am enjoying it. The more I'm reading it, the more invested I'm getting in the story and the characters. Guess who finished book 1? I'm going to settle on a 4 stars, and I'm going to tell you why. I enjoyed this thoroughly, although there were a lot of things that were frustrating me to no end, but that's the purpose of this book. It's meant to do that. I would not recommend it to everyone, and it's the type of book that if I did recommend it to someone and they didn't like it, I wouldn't be offended, because I get it. You know, I get it. This is not the type of book that everyone would read and enjoy. I was just particularly really in the mood for this, which is why I'm glad that I waited so long to pick it up until I was in that mood and was craving something like this. You'll see what I think throughout the rest of the series, but for now I'm settling at a 4 stars for book 1, which is a great rating, especially because I've been reading a lot of books lately that I haven't necessarily enjoyed a ton. I think that this has potential to becoming a 5-star series for me, a series that I won't be able to stop thinking about, considering the fact that I haven't been able to stop thinking about book 1 as I've been reading it. I've flown through it. It has gotten me out of my reading slump. I'm just so excited to see where it keeps going. I wish you guys would have saw what I looked like when I read the last few pages of this, because my jaw, I'm not exaggerating either, my jaw was open for the last handful of pages because I could not believe what happened, and it makes me want to jump into book 2 immediately. I unfortunately stayed up too late reading this one, so I need to go to bed, and then I will definitely be picking up book 2 tomorrow because I'm obsessed. Do I love the characters? No, not necessarily, but I want to see what happens to them. It's hard for me to root for them, especially when they keep making the same toxic, bad decisions over and over again. You want to slap them in the face, and it's hard to root for someone who is making the same mistakes continuously, but I am hoping that we're going to see some change in them throughout the series. On to book 2. I'm so excited!
Everybody's relationships tangle. Pursuits can only be paid in blood. Thank you, Hayden, for that.
I'm currently on page 412, which means I have less than 100 pages left. I'm gonna try to finish it right now. I just woke up, and I woke up thinking about it, woke up wanting to see what's gonna end up happening. There's a lot going down. The fact that we still have 100 pages left, if things are gonna end in the way they did in book 1 for Magnolia, I am scared. That was a very crazy ending. And this one, I'm scared. I apologize for extra background noise. Obviously, I'm outside, but I come to you with news that I finished Daisy Haites. I love this one even more than the first one, and I don't know if that necessarily means that I loved this book itself, or I've just loved the story more as I've read it, and I think it's the latter. This book pretty much entirely takes place during the events of Magnolia Parks. We're just getting it through a different perspective, which is interesting to kind of fill in the gaps of what was happening from book one versus now with Daisy Haites' point of view. Only a couple crossover scenes between Daisy and Magnolia in book one. It's funny because the characters Daisy and Magnolia do not like each other. I loved being able to see Daisy's perspective of everything that's happening because it makes you wonder sometimes if the main character is a reliable narrator or not, especially when emotions are so heavily involved when it comes to Magnolia and BJ and Daisy and everyone else. So I really enjoyed that. Also, we get the point of view of Daisy's brother Julian. He's a gang lord in London. He's like the most notorious criminal in London, and Daisy, being his younger sister, faces a lot of different challenges that Magnolia has. They both have some overlap with their wealth, status, and boy problems, but other than that, their circumstances are very different. This sounds bad, but I'm just thinking of like Six of Crows. The Six of Crows duology is one of my favorite books ever. We have this gang of criminals who are planning a heist, and we get a bit of that with Julian and his business throughout this one. Them always stealing paintings, I think, is interesting to see, but it stirs up a lot of additional plot points that we don't have in book one, and I am scared and interested to see how those are going to pan out in the rest of the series because things are not resolved at the end. I mean, the fact that there are more books in the series, I think, says enough about that. The last 100 pages or so take place after the events of book one, so we got a little bit more glimpse into it, and then at the very end, the last chapter is Magnolia's point of view. So that, I think, is bringing me back into the Magnolia Parks universe of it all. I personally think I like Daisy more than I like Magnolia, and I'm going back and forth if I want to give this one a 4 stars like I did with book one, or if I want to give it a 4.5, just because I love this series so much I could not stop thinking about it. You'll see what rating I ended up going with on screen. Regardless, I loved this. It was full of drama. Different type of romance. Still toxic, don't get me wrong. Full of gossip and crazy things happening. So that was similar to book one, but it was a different type of situation than Magnolia and BJ's situation was, which I appreciated because I didn't necessarily want to read an entire book that was 500 pages of essentially the same thing. So if you loved book one, you'll like this one, but if you did not like book one, you won't like this one, is how I would recommend this one. So because it is similar to book one in the way of you get the same world and characters and universe, which I'm loving this universe. It's been a lot of fun to read about. You still get a different story from a new character who we are learning more about. Another character who is morally gray. You want to root for her because she's the main character, but she keeps making terrible decisions, exactly like Magnolia did. Based on how things were left between Daisy and her love interest in this book, I'm curious to see how it's going to pan out in the rest of the series. And I'm wondering if the next 2 books are also going to take place at the same time like book 1 and 2 did, or if we'll get a break and come back. I'm not really sure how that's going to work out. Regardless, I am done with book 2, and now we are on to Magnolia Parks: The Long Way Home. I'm scared, but I'm also so excited, enjoying the series a lot. I usually don't read series back to back to back because I usually need a break, but these are so fun and easy to read and easy to breeze through. They're like a TV show that you want to binge. That's how I'm feeling with these. I don't get that feeling often when it comes to series and books, just because a lot of times the series I'm reading are pretty heavy. And not that there aren't heavy themes in this, but these feel like a reality TV show that you want to binge, if that makes sense. Boy, do I want to binge it. So I will be starting book 3 today. I made a strawberry matcha, which coincidentally matches my next book in the series, Magnolia Parks: The Long Way Home. These books progressively get longer as the series goes on by about 100 pages each. Book 1 was 400-ish, book 5 is 500-ish. This one is almost 600 pages, which honestly, I'm cruising through them anyways, and I'm eating the story up, so it's fine. It's kind of crazy how much longer they keep going. I'm like, what else is bound to happen? I got 44 pages in. I'm to chapter 6. This book takes place about a year after everything ended in book 1 and 2. It's weird seeing where everyone, all of the characters, Magnolia, but also her friend group, her family, where they're at after the events that went down at the end of book 1, especially Magnolia's point of view, was a lot more than Daisy's ending of her book. But I am curious to see what Daisy is up to at this point. We haven't heard any mention of her thus far. I'm only 44 pages in. There's a lot that is probably going to happen throughout this. Without spoiling, it's weird because they're supposed to have been, and when I say they, I'm talking about Magnolia and BJ, should be moved on from each other at this point. Are they going to be? Obviously not. I mean, they're the love interests of this entire series. I'm trying to think what might happen for them to come back together, and also the fact that there's another Magnolia book in this universe after this one makes me think it's not going to wrap up in this one, because there's no way, knowing their history, how toxic they are, the patterns that they keep repeating, what's going to happen with that? I'm hoping we're going to see more of the fame aspect of everything, and that Magnolia is going to grow as a person and make better decisions for herself that will in turn, maybe if BJ does the same, allow them to come together and it not be how it always has been for the two of them. I don't really know what to expect with this one. So I'm just going to dive in and sit out here now that it's finally warm out and read a bit. I'm not sure how much reading time I'll get this week, but knowing how I've been with the other two books in the series, I'm finding every opportunity I can to pick them up and read them. I'm a third of the way through The Long Way Home. I've been reading it in between my appointments. We have learned some important context about Magnolia and BJ from when they were younger. Obviously, this wasn't anything that the narration told us before this point. Puts a lot into perspective of why they are so obsessed with each other and why they cannot let each other go, and it's really sad, actually. I feel like guilty that I didn't know about it before this, but obviously how would I have known, and because we just found out. I think this shifts a lot of my perspective of the relationship. I still stand by everything I've said about it being very toxic and them having a lot of things they need to work out on, but it also makes a lot more sense why they can't let each other go. I'm not gonna lie, I'm halfway through and I'm getting a little bit sick of the antics, to the point where I'm like, how am I gonna read 2 more books, or at least 1 more book from Magnolia and BJ's perspective, and things aren't gonna be resolved until I assume the end of those books. Don't get me wrong, I'm still having a good time, but could things be condensed a little more? Maybe. I did read that the next book, so next book of Daisies, you can tandem read with this one because they take place at the same time, compared to book 1 and 2 where people said although they take place at the same time, you should not read them together. I'm already halfway through this one, so I guess I'm not gonna tandem read them. I wonder if my experience would be much different there. I'm curious to see what's going down with Daisy, because we are getting a little bit more crossover scenes than we did in book 1 and 2, so that will be interesting. I don't really know. I'm just like thinking about the fact that if I were dating, like if I were a guy dating Magnolia, or if I were dating BJ, I would hate to be in that position because they're just in love with each other the whole time. Why anyone is wanting to put themselves through that is beyond me, especially when there's like actual feelings involved and they're not just casually getting to know each other and going on dates. The fact that people are still trying to pursue BJ and Magnolia while all this is happening is bonkers to me. They must really have a grip on people, and I don't know if it's because they're both good looking, their status, their wealth, I don't know. Because their personalities, to me, I'm like, are they really worth all that? I'm not really sure. I'm getting ready for bed and I'm just thinking about the book and how I can tell that their dysfunction is catching up to them. There are a lot of frustrating parts about them, but I think what has been frustrating me most, and again, like it's meant to do this, is the fact that the lifestyle they're living is not sustainable at all. Your life will never be fulfilled if you're filling it with only the things they're doing. And that's one of the reasons why it's so interesting to read about, in my opinion, is because my lifestyle is nowhere near what theirs is for a litany of reasons. But their status and wealth has enabled them to make these choices. And I'm not saying that the blame is entirely off them, because they're adults and they should know better, but because they grew up this way, they don't know better. And that's one of the reasons this series has been so fascinating for me, is because I cannot comprehend having that much wealth and status that I can do whatever I want, and then having parents who are not present in my life to the point where I didn't have a great father or mother figure to look up to. So I'm making all these terrible decisions, and they like cannot break the cycle. I'm almost done with book 3. It's so fascinating to me. This series has felt like a social experiment in ways. I have spent so many hours with these characters that although I'm very frustrated at them, I'm rooting for them. More than want, I need to know what happens at this point. If I wasn't so tired after working all day, I would sit and read some more, but I need to go to bed, and I'm hoping that tomorrow I can wake up and finish it since it's the weekend. I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I have not done a good job updating as I have been reading Daisy Haites in The Great Undoing. It's just because there's been a lot going on in real life between like medical stuff. I had to have a few procedures done and just was not in the mood to film. So I'm gonna try to give my brief thoughts on what I thought about this book. It's been a bit since I finished this. I'm currently reading the last one, but I'm just like popping back in here as I'm editing because I need to give an update on this because I realized I never did. Honestly, loved this one. I loved this more than the first Daisy Haites book. The only thing I really struggled with was after finishing the book before this one, the way it ends with Magnolia and BJ. Girl, what? What are you doing? He said he's trying to get out of his car so his music can keep playing. Anyways, the way that book 3 ended with Magnolia and BJ, the way I was not able to jump into the last Magnolia and BJ book, and instead I had to put a pause in that and then go back and revisit. Obviously, this takes place at the same time as that one. Was a bit frustrating because if you know how the last one ends, you just know what I'm talking about. So that was my only thing with this one, was I'm like, I just need to know what happens. I need to know what happens. But then the way that this one ends, I cannot believe there's not going to be another Daisy book. I'm hoping Jessica either does a good job wrapping everything up in the final book, even though we're not going to get Daisy and Julian and then Daisy's love interest point of view in Magnolia and BJ's book, just because it's never been like that. Or maybe there'll be another book that comes out. I actually don't know when the last book in the series came out, and I'm scared to Google anything because I don't want to accidentally get any spoilers. So yeah, let's continue on to the final book. Last night as I was reading, I was crying. So currently crying. And I'm only on page 174. Actually, I can't handle this. I really can't. Without spoiling, I want to talk a bit about how this one is different than the other books in the series, because we've worked out a lot of issues, but there was still a big event that happened at the end of Magnolia and BJ's last book that we're trying to go through and deal with in a healthy way, and trying to continue those good habits when your world is flipped upside down, to keep that up, especially in a relationship where they've been so toxic for so long. I'm kind of devastated that I'm almost done with the series. I wish I had 5 more books. Like, give me 5 more right now. This is definitely the heaviest out of the series, but I'm glad it has taken this direction, just because then it's not the same repeat of scenes over and over and over again. Another thing I was thinking about is how we have a whole cast of characters, right? And we get Daisy's point of view in Daisy's books, along with like her brother and her love interest. We're not getting everyone's point of view in these books, which I actually appreciate, because sometimes, especially if you read a lot of fantasy, it usually starts with a single or dual POV, and then as the cast of characters grow, the POV swaps are growing as well. But in Magnolia and BJ's books, they have stuck strictly to only Magnolia and BJ's point of views, which I like, because we're still learning about the other characters, and they're obviously in a lot of scenes. I don't feel the need to want to dive into their mind as deep as I want for Magnolia and BJ, because I want to see how their story ends up. And if like Jessa Hastings were to write more books about, this is coming from someone who hasn't finished the series. I don't know how everyone's character arc is going to end at the end of the series. If there was room for like a spin-off of some of the other characters, I would still read it. But I appreciate that these books have stuck strictly in the same POVs as they did to begin with. I didn't think too much about that until today, when I was sitting in the car thinking about how I was glad I wasn't getting every single character's thoughts, and I fear that the waterworks are just gonna continue going. I I've completed the entire series, and overall what I think is that I absolutely loved it, okay? To me, this was kind of a guilty pleasure type read because I don't read a lot of romance, this type of genre, I guess, in general. The fact that I read them all back to back doesn't really ever happen with series for me. I usually have to take a break in between. When I finished Into the Dark, tears were shed for both happy and sad reasons. What I will say is Daisy's story does not wrap up in this book, and like I mentioned before, I didn't want to do a ton of research into if we were going to be getting more because I didn't want to get spoilers. Thankfully, I did wait to search that until after I finished the series because there were spoilers that popped up. So to give you a spoiler-free update on that, it's unconfirmed. Apparently, Jessa Hastings has said and committed to writing at least one more book from Daisy's perspective because Magnolia and BJ's story is done. I'm hoping we don't revisit it just so we stop while we're ahead. You know, that type of situation. But in terms of Daisy and her love interest story, it does not wrap up. And just from getting to know Daisy better in her two books, I can infer what was happening behind the scenes in this one. I don't think we necessarily needed an entire book taking place at the same time as this one. And what I've seen, it sounds like, is that there's gonna be more that take place after this book. From what I'm gathering, it was supposed to release like a couple years ago and it never did. And Jessa Hastings says she doesn't feel motivated to write it, so I guess I would rather wait until she feels motivated instead of her just doing a cash grab to get more out. That makes me a bit nervous that we're never gonna see that story tie up. But overall, loved the series. Again, I understand why people don't like it. I think I've said this before, but this is the type of series where I love it, but if I recommended it to someone and they didn't like it, I wouldn't be offended because it really takes a specific reading taste to enjoy this. Overall, I'm glad I gave it a try, and maybe you'll want to give it a try too. And let me know if there are any other books or series that you want me to read to see if I think they're worth the hype. This one, I understand why. There's a hype behind it. That is all for today's video. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you next time.